Right up here. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. All right. How lucky am I to share my testimony with you tonight? So, hi, everybody. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ in recovery from drugs and alcohol, and I come to celebrate recovery to work on my codependency. My name is Lindsay. Hello. So before I begin, I want to share a quick prayer that's sometimes known as the set-aside prayer. God, today help me set aside everything I think I know about you, myself, others, and my recovery, so I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please help me see the truth. Amen. This prayer is really good for me because it helps quiet my ego, which likes to say things like, "You've got this," or "You already know enough," but my best thinking got me here. Recovery is lifelong, I'm never done, and that's actually good news. The moments that I think I have it all figured out, those are usually the moments that I'm heading straight into trouble. I've been sober from drugs and alcohol for over 10 years now, thanks to God and to a lot of the people he's used to keep me alive and growing. And real quick, I just want to let you know how my brain works. So when Christine asked me to share my testimony again, I thought, wait a minute, I already gave my best testimony ever. I'm not going to top that one. But thankfully, recovery is about progress, not perfection, and that reminder is a true gift. I also want to take a moment to say how meaningful that was for me personally. I've struggled with low self-esteem for most of my life until recently. So for me to stand up here, share my testimony, and then with a microphone tell you all that I'm proud of it, that's a huge victory. So thank you to God. I'll share a bit of me and my past, what happened and what it was like, and how I've continued to grow in my recovery. I got sober at the age of 22, not because I was so wise and I wanted this good life for myself, but because my addiction took over rather severely and quickly. I truly had no choice. For me, it was to get help or die. I am from Connecticut. I grew up as an only child with my mom and my dad. I went to a small Catholic school, and I have clear memories in second grade. My teacher was a nun. She didn't beat me with a ruler, but she was a nun. And she told this story that when she was little, she asked God for something, and she said she promised God that if God made her prayer come true, that she would become a nun. And he did. He made her prayer come true. So I told everybody that I immediately wanted to become a nun, which is kind of funny if you know me. But what is not so funny is that at a young age, I was filled with fear, and I would constantly worry that my parents would prematurely die or somehow be taken from me. I remember being on the school bus and thinking very OCD-type thoughts, like I had to pray the rosary so many times a day in order to keep my parents safe and not let them die. I had an image of God that was very punishing and scary, and I deeply misunderstood the meaning of a God-fearing person. I did do some other OCD-type tendencies, such as needing to run up and down the stairs in so many seconds, or something bad would happen. I played mind games like this often with myself. I started the codependency pattern early, thinking that my actions had a direct correlation to other people's well-being, and that maybe I could somehow save them. I internalized this belief at a young age. Before I ever picked up a drug or a drink, I remember I lied to someone when they asked if I smoked weed. I truthfully had not, but I lied and I told them I did. I think it's important to highlight that before I ever used a mind-altering substance, I was already pretty proficient at lying. From that interaction, I was on a mission to find weed, and of course I did. I'm very resourceful, and I was immediately hooked. I loved the fact that it calmed me down, and it brought me to this more carefree world. It quieted all the fear. When I found alcohol shortly after, I drank in excess. I was on ADHD medication at the time, and the interaction with alcohol was horrible. I could drink a lot, and not feel any of the effects of the alcohol, and then all of a sudden I would be blackout drunk, and many times I woke up in the hospital, not remembering how I got there. I ruined house parties for my underage friends. I caused a lot of worry to everybody around me. Despite all of this, I became obsessed with the lifestyle. I continued to lie constantly. I stopped caring about school, work, anything that didn't involve getting high or drinking. I went to college just because everybody else was going, so I went through the motions. I had no direction, only escape. I was in a relationship at the time, and I will spare you all the details, but I can say that most of my romantic relationships have followed a similar pattern until recently. I wouldn't speak up when something hurt or bothered me. I would pretend I was fine. I would stay quiet. I would bury my feelings until they eventually boiled over and came out in ways that were not helpful. I used to think I was keeping the peace, but really I was afraid. I was afraid of being left, afraid of being seen as too much, afraid that I wasn't enough. Deep down, I hoped that they would just know what I needed without me having to ask, which is crazy. But when they didn't, I would take it as proof that I wasn't lovable or good enough. This has been a big part of my codependency, trying to earn love by being who I thought somebody wanted, by performing, by avoiding conflict, and by people-pleasing. Today, through God's grace and a lot of hard work, I'm learning to check in with myself. I'm learning to understand my own needs and meet my own needs. I'm learning to seek wisdom from healthy people, and I'm learning to use my voice, even when it's scary. Today I know that I am enough, I am safe, and I am loved. And I have to remind myself that often. So, drug and alcohol addiction, along with codependency, took over my life. I got linked up with a different crowd, and I found other substances. I got addicted to cocaine, and I truthfully thought my boyfriend at the time was the one with the problem. But when I dropped him off at rehab, after a lot of chaos to get there, I was finally alone with myself, and I realized I too had a problem. I had a serious problem. I got honest with my parents, and I went to rehab at the age of 18. But I wasn't ready. I relapsed, eventually on heroin. I isolated, I stole, and I kept people out. My life got smaller and darker. It was a true sad existence. This went on for a few years. After missing a methadone dose, I came down to Florida for detox and for treatment. It was a good program, and I actually had a lot of fun there. The life in me started to come back, and I learned a lot of things. At the end, though, I was stubborn, and I did not take their suggestion, and I instead went to a terrible halfway house. Reflecting on this, I did go because of a guy, and no, I'm not blaming. I chose this, but this has just been a pattern of mine until recently. It was a very short-lived stay, and I was actually getting kicked out somehow, which was hard to do, and my mom found me, and she took me home. I truly wanted to stay clean and sober at this point, but I just could not. It was a lot of me trying and failing, and I was just full of despair. I can't remember what the exact breaking point was, but this last time, my parents told me I was going back to Florida and to not expect to return home. So I took it seriously this time, because I had to. This tough love from my parents was crucial for me. I went to an all-women's facility. I went to an all-women's halfway house after, and it was very strict. I stayed there for a year, and I slowly started to become a functioning member of society, truthfully for the first time ever. I attended AA. Maybe you have heard they suggest going to 90 meetings in 90 days. Well, I went to like 180 meetings in 90 days because I didn't know what to do with myself. I got a sponsor, I worked the steps, I got a job, I stayed employed, and I made really good friends. I made a good life for myself down here. Once I had a year sober, I started working in treatment, and I loved it. Eventually, though, I got burnt out, and I stopped going to meetings, and I stopped calling my sponsor. I stopped working a program. I thought I was fine, but that's usually when I fall into danger, not just of relapse, but of spiritual and emotional emptiness. At one point, I went home to Connecticut for my cousin's funeral. It was beyond devastating to lose him. And everybody in my family is still heartbroken. Being an only child, my cousins are like my siblings, and my parents thought that I had relapsed. And while I hadn't relapsed, I was not living in recovery. I wasn't doing the work. No sponsor calls, no prayer. I was just kind of drifting. So I couldn't really blame them for thinking that. This moment nudged me back into working a program of recovery, and I reworked the steps again. And guess what, you guys? Things got better for me again. And after a while, the same thing occurred where I slowly stopped working a program and I rested on my laurels. This is another pattern. So fast forward, I get into a serious relationship. There were some red flags, but I ignored them. I moved in with him anyway, and I was working remotely. I felt completely cut off from the outside world. Little by little, I began outsourcing my peace, my joy, and even my sense of self to him. My emotional stability was entirely dependent on how he was acting or treating me that day. The relationship became emotionally exhausting and unsustainable. I did not pick up drugs or alcohol, but I was absolutely not well. I was in full-blown codependency. It's humbling and honestly embarrassing to admit, but I had made this man my higher power. I lost myself. Things got really bad, but pain has always been a strong motivator for me. And I once again was given the gift of desperation. And that's what brought me here to celebrate recovery. Looking back, I know it was truly God who led me here. This church and this community has saved my life. I finally stopped isolating. I got connected with healthy women, and I started receiving the support that I so desperately needed. I began working the program again, and I attended therapy regularly. I gave that relationship my best effort, but eventually I had to end it for the sake of my own health and well-being. And this time I was able to walk away with integrity. It was heartbreaking, but I learned how to grieve in a healthy way. I got the right support, and I've been learning to love myself. Today, I'm aware that it's unhealthy to look to a human being for my worth. I really try to look to God for my validation. To be honest, I still qualify for nearly every 12-step program out there, and that's okay. When the substances were removed a long time ago, I realized I still had tons of unhealthy coping mechanisms. This could be men, food, sex, shopping, sleep, gambling, busyness, caretaking, you name it. Anything that could numb the emptiness, I chased it. I still very much struggle to live life in moderation. I always thought that if the people around me were okay, then I would be okay. So I made it my job to keep everybody else happy, calm, and taken care of, whether they asked for it or not. That, my friends, is called control. But it wore the mask of people-pleasing. So what do I do today, especially in recovery from codependency? And Christine mentioned this is really long, so if you zoned out, zone back in. So I pray, especially in moments when I'm triggered or tempted to fix or people please. I listen to worship music to reset my focus on Jesus. I stay connected to a sponsor, a sponsee, and healthy people who actually tell me the truth. I make and receive phone calls even when I don't like it, and I let people in. I write gratitude lists, and let me just tell you, when this sounds really annoying or obnoxious or pointless, this is exactly when I need to make one. I pause when I want to react, and I ask God for guidance before I respond. Sometimes that looks like just taking a breath. I begrudgingly journal, even when I want to push feelings down or just hand them off to somebody else. I take accountability for my part, and I try to let go of what's not mine. I go to meetings. There's always one available in person or online. I've joined recovery book clubs that bring laughter, connection, and healing. I've completed a step study here at Celebrate Recovery, and I now get to serve on the training team. I get to show up for my friends, my family, and myself. And most importantly, I keep coming back, especially on the days that I don't feel like it. That's the end of my list. I can take full responsibility for myself and my choices today, and I do not have to be responsible for other people's feelings, and that's a weight off. Another thing I realized is that busyness became one of my biggest coping mechanisms. When I couldn't numb out with substances anymore, I tried to numb out by doing. If I stayed busy enough, working enough, helping, rushing around, I didn't have to sit with my feelings. But busyness without purpose can leave me just as exhausted and disconnected. Today, I'm learning that rest is not laziness, it's an act of trust. Trust that God loves me even when I'm not producing or fixing anything. This passage is from Codependence Guide to the 12 Steps by Blvd. Now this is kind of long, but it's good. Emotional sobriety means that we are not constantly reacting to childhood fears. We are not harboring resentments and compulsively acting out old patterns of abandonment or control. We can feel our feelings and share them without fear of judgment or rejection. Emotional sobriety means that we can let go of what is outside of our control and focus on what we can change within ourselves. We are learning to reparent ourselves with gentleness, humor, love, and respect. We begin to detach from destructive behaviors, including self-criticism, approval-seeking, and people-pleasing. We find relief in understanding that our worth is not determined by others' opinions of us. Through our higher power and our recovery work, we developed a new sense of self that is based on inner peace rather than chaos or external validation. This has been huge in my recovery the past few years. Today, it's not just about avoiding substances, it's about building a life that I don't want to escape from. A life rooted in honesty, gentleness, and connection with God and others. It's about letting God rewrite the story that I used to believe about my worth and learning to love the parts of me that I once tried to hide. Because it's June, I'll share about step 6. We were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Bless you. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. One of the biggest areas of growth for me has been learning to recognize my character defects, not just as liabilities, but as opportunities for God to transform them. So for example, my stubbornness, which I've been very stubborn, it used to keep me stuck in self-will. It's slowly being reshaped into willingness. Willingness to listen, willingness to try a new way, and willingness to surrender what I thought I had to control. Instead of letting worry take over, I'm learning to lean into trust. Instead of spiraling into negative thinking, I'm practicing awareness and choosing to focus on what's good. When I notice that I'm swept away or overwhelmed with busyness, I can use the mantra, I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm beyond grateful that I don't have to do this alone. None of us do. Today I can keep my focus on God, and when I stray, I have people and a God who gives me unlimited grace and love. And I'll be honest, even as I share my testimony today, my life still feels messy in a lot of ways. There are things that I'm praying through, surrendering again, learning to trust God with all over. But I'm not sharing because I figured it out. I'm sharing because I know God's still working. And if he's not done with me, he's not done with you either. The newcomer, you're important. Please stick around and try it out. If it doesn't work, you can go right back to how you were operating. I promise you that life will still be there. The goal is to work this program so we can create lives where we don't need to outsource our happiness. Thank God I had people tell me the same. Thank you for letting me share.